when I first became a PM, I was an AI PM on day one. So I thought that all the challenges I was facing were challenges everyone else was facing. But, I was doing it before it was cool type of thing. So when you work with AI, there's just so many little things you need to consider. Number one, the probabilistic nature of AI. This means that every single time you use a feature, you're going to get kind of a different behavior. And when you're building a product that you hope to have a specific experience for the users, you can't really guess what that's going to look like. And a lot of people are not comfortable with that. Let me give you an example. I was a part of a product review and I was demonstrating this AI product, AI feature I was launching, and leadership was trying it out and they said, hey, I don't think this works well because it's not consistent. Every time I'm using it, I'm getting a different answer. And I said, well, that's the probabilistic nature. Like this is working as intended. So that probabilistic nature has a lot of challenges it gives you as the PM because you have to make people around you be comfortable with this uncertainty, if you will, but it's also kind of the beauty. Example is if you use Google Gemini or DALL-E to generate an image with the same prompt, you're gonna get a different image generated. And or if you're driving a car and you use self-driving, there's always like a little probability that comes to it. So nothing is 100% safe. Nothing is 100% accurate. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two, there's this experimentation culture that is tied to AI products because of this uncertainty, you need to do way more experiments than in classic product management because you're just making hypotheses at all times. And you say, well, I believe that if I deploy this model into this experience, we're going to get outcome X. But it's not always the case. So there's a ton of experiments, there's a ton of pivoting. And, if you have a team that's very much used to, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, and then achieve Y, they don't really get that. They get demotivated. They don't know if they're on the right track. They don't know if, they're progressing in their career. So fostering a culture of experimentation in your team, engineers and stakeholders is important. So I had in the past to figure out what success meant for a product. And in traditional product management, it's, okay, we're launching, we're getting hundreds or millions of users, awesome, figure out. Whereas in AI product management, success may be, hey, we made hypothesis A, we tested it out, we figured out, hey, that's not going to work, and we pivoted. And that hitting a milestone of being able to get an answer to the hypothesis is success. So it's more of a milestone-based progress, if you will. So yeah, I can speak about AI products forever, but I think these are the things that stand out the most.
Okay, so certainly that first point about things being probabilistic is really interesting because if you come from a data science background, a lot of stuff is probabilistic. If you come from a software engineering background, like almost everything's deterministic. So I can see how there's a bit of a culture clash there. Okay, so your second point about experiments was really interesting. Can you just go into maybe a bit more depth about like what do these experiments look like and who performs them and what are you expecting?
Let's assume we work for a startup, and this is totally hypothetical, by the way. And let's assume that the startup has created an app which essentially replaces the native keyboard on your phone. And let's assume that the whole premise is, hey, this keyboard learns from your texting behavior so that it can actually predict what you want to say, and it's going to kind of speak for you and on your behalf eventually because it knows how you speak, it knows the words you use, and you don't need to type everything. It will just say, hey, did you mean to say, hey, how are you doing today? With like 2 question marks, just pop it. It gets pre-filled. So let's assume that's it. Let's assume you've launched and you have a certain amount of users, people like it. Now, in the back end and in the startup, you likely have a partner, which is a research scientist that gets a lot of the data that come in from users and logs. And they can use this data in the back end to improve their model. So in the backend, the scientists will come to you and they will say, hey, we see the usage. We have some metrics to measure success. These metrics can be, correct prediction of what the user meant to say and satisfaction, all these things. But I have a model that I think that if we run and launch this model and replace the model that's currently live, we are going to get improved metrics. So we're going to run a little experiment, and we are going to say, all right, for 50% of the population, we are going to keep the model that's currently out that can predict what Marily wants to type as they type it. And then for the other 50%, we're going to silent launch the new version of this model. And we're going to measure our North Star metric, which can be ratio of accepted suggestions, let's say, prompted to the user. If this metric goes up for the version we're testing, which is the improved model, awesome, we'll start rolling out to the rest of the population. If not, we'll roll back out so that we just discard this. So there's a ton of that. And sometimes I launched the new version of the model, even if it was performing worse, because I knew that over time you'd get more data and it would get improved. But as a user, I've been in the side where I had a product that I loved and it was perfect. And then suddenly I upgraded to like the new version and I hated it. But that's what AI and probabilistic nature is. You kind of need to learn that there's a learning curve in the system that needs to learn you. And you need to be careful. And you need to be comfortable as a user to know that, hey, this thing listens to me and it understands me and how I behave, and it's going to improve a product for me.